Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 11th of September 2024. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of this committee. I'll now introduce you to the top table. From my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my vice convener, Ms Jessica Gill, Democratic Governance Officer, and Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor. And on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, Mr Sean Panton, Team Leader Major Developments, and Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader Local Developments. And as this is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of an item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on that item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting for the proceedings today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members have access to. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and attendance of those in the chambers and online.
Thank you, convener. We have apologies today from Councillor Cuthbert with Bailey Brock substituting. We just have one member online. Councillor James, can you confirm you're present, please?
Good morning, Jess. I'm here.
Okay, apologies for that. We'll go to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest on any item today? No declarations of interest. Item 3 is the minutes. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 3rd of July 2024? Thank you. Can I ask the committee if they're prepared to hear deputations on items 512, 521, 522, 523 and 524? Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputation by the vice convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It's requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning consideration in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the question asked. Item 5 is applications for determination. The first application is for a residential development with associated access road, landscaping, SUDs and associated works, LDP 3 allocated site MU27, in principle, land 170 metres southwest of 8 Tayview, Luncarty. And to introduce the report is Mr Smith.
Thank you, convener. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the delay there, but what's us starting off now? I'll just quickly take you through some of the information related to this application, which was previously presented to the committee on the 10th of January this year, where a minded to grant decision was taken. That position then to allow a Section 75 legal agreement to be progressed to control the delivery of developer obligations and other matters. However, on review of the detail, it's found that some of the required obligations have not been specified in the report. Thus, the committee had not agreed to their inclusion. Therefore, the application is being represented to the committee to address this and allow an all-encompassing minded to grant position to be considered today. I'll refamiliarise the committee with the proposals via a brief summary description and then visual presentation to set the scene. So, planning permission in principle is sought for the development of an indicative 110 residential units on the north-eastern part of site MU27, which is allocated in the Perth Kinross Local Development Plan 2. The wider allocation has an indicative capacity of 760 units, with planning permission in principle having already been granted to the west for an indicative 650 units and 5 hectares of employment land on the remainder of the allocation. Thus, together with the LDP2 numbers, both permissions would cover across the two areas, totaling 760. That's 110 and 650. It's considered that the proposals are in line with the development plan and recommended that planning permission be approved, subject to the aforementioned section 75. Now, in addition, an update to the report has been circulated, which sets out a revised condition 1, that's simplifying the wording on when matters specified in condition applications can be brought forward. The related existing direction in the papers is no longer required and is recommended to be deleted. Since the publication of the report as well, the agent has queried the wording of condition 3, which limits the number of units in this particular zone to the indicated 110. That had intended to be reflective of the capacity of 760 units minus the 650 which were indicated to be anticipated on the adjacent site. However, the condition attached to the paper and the existing permission does not specify a number of units, rather referring to compliance with the development plan, which, as I said, has an upper limit of 760 across the two sites. It's therefore been agreed by officers that it is more consistent and flexible to reflect the approach taken in the previous permission, and a revised wording on condition 3 is therefore proposed. It should, however, be noted that the maximum number across both sites would remain limited by LDP2 to 760, but there would be flexibility in how these were delivered via the two permissions. So there may be less on one or more on another, but it would all total 760. Also importantly, any exceedance of that maximum capacity would require a separate planning permission where the impacts would be considered further, so there is no change in terms of the intended position. Additionally, condition 9 also sees reference to a dust management plan. That's in relation to the construction environment management plan, and a procedural note is also changed to reflect that a new rather than an updated section 75 is required. So I'll now take you through the presentation to summarise the proposals and give some site context. This first image that we see shows the site south of Lunkerty and highlighting it in red. Next slide, please. The second image shows the site outlined in red again on an extract from the allocation in LDP2, with the purple and yellow areas out with the red line area, the remainder of the allocation. Next. Here we have the site shown in black hatching as it relates to the currently approved phasing plan associated to the already granted planning permission in principle. Next slide. We then see the site as it was shown in relation to the approved master plan. Next slide. This image shows the site set out in the master plan submitted in support of this application. Next slide. And the final plan here shows an indicative layout for the site, which shows a layout incorporating 110 units. It should be noted that although the detail of the development is not to be considered, that the access points in the various documents align across those drawings that I've shown you, and those last 4 slides are all indicative details and only for the purposes of showing high-level possibilities. The precise detail of layout, phasing, etc. to come via future matter specified in conditions applications. I'll now move to a series of photographs to give a feel for the site context. This first image is taken from the unnamed road which runs along the northern boundary of the allocation and south of Lunkerty, accessing properties on Tayview, which I'll show later. The shot looks east from the northwestern corner of the site. The higher ground is indicated in the applicant's indicative layout to be used for landscaping recreation, with construction on lower ground beyond and to the right hand side of the image. The next image. This moves to within the site and looks southeast, with the River Tay within the central treed area at the edge of the field. This image showing the gentle rolling nature of the majority of the site beyond that raised area in the previous slide. Next. Here we have an image looking in the opposite direction from that higher ground down onto properties on Hatton Road and beyond. Next. Here we turn east and see the rear of properties on Tayview, which, as I said, are accessed along that unnamed road that runs along the northern boundary of the site. And the final photo. Here we return to the location of the first slide and look along that existing road leading to Tayview. Again, the higher ground at the northern part of the site is evident from the right of shot. Thank you, convener. This ends the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Can I ask, do members have any questions for officers? Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, convener. I was just wondering if officers could give me a bit more details about condition 1, which is giving the development 20 years to start from the date of grant of this permission. I was just wondering why is that?
Well, this is a very large development site with significant improvements to roadworks and other contributions, etc., design phases, etc., to take place. It's even with a fair wind, I think, a period of 20 years to develop 760 houses is reasonable. So what it's doing is allowing for that phase development process to take place and not have the planning permission expire before works are completed.
Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. And Mr. Smith, thanks for the presentation. Great. I'm just a little concerned about the change to the condition, which gives really an uncapped limit on the 110 houses, where it becomes indicative. I mean, the graphic you showed there of what's indicative is actually quite packed, if you like, and I just have a concern that if that limit was to be exceeded, it would just be an overdevelopment. And I seem to recall that this was actually discussed at length because of the location of this part at the bottom end of the site next to the Tay. So I suppose my question is it really necessary to remove that 110 limit rather than making it indicative? Thank you.
Yeah. I think the answer to that is it's just giving flexibility. What we're not saying is, oh, and this will see more than 110 units developed. It might be 111, it might be 108, it might be 99, it might be any number in and amongst that general layout. But what it is doing is giving flexibility should there be a need to move across the two sites. It may well be that this site doesn't see any housing developed on it and this is the employment land. It's just giving flexibility, but the matter specified in conditions applications that we will receive will assess whether or not the density, layout, design, access parameters, etc., areas of landscaping are all acceptable. If you look at that plan again, there's significant areas of landscaping shown. So I don't feel that the layout that's shown at the minute is particularly dense. I accept that you might have a different view, but I feel that there's certainly plenty of room for flexibility across what is a very large site. This is only around, I think, 27.5% of the overall area, and we'll see where that gets to. 110 units is also less than 27% across the site. Okay, thanks.
Councillor James, just to add in that the change has very much been driven by the legal perspective for very, very technical reasons, partly also because the change matches the other site's permission. So it's about making it consistent as well. But if it gives you any comfort, there are physical restrictions. There is to be a buffer zone next to the River Tay, for example, and you mentioned overdevelopment. Any future application, whether it be AMSC or an FLM, your remit you would be able to look at whether you consider it's overdevelopment or not.
Thanks for that, Mr. Elliott. And I am aware this is only an in principle. It was just, I thought trying to catch it early rather than when it comes to a full planning. But thank you very much for the information.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Again, just for clarity, you know, the picture that you've got up here on the screen, Mr. Smith, is of an unadopted road. Is there any way that we can make some form of protection as to the standard of that road is not eroded for the people who upkeep that road? Is that something that maybe that will come in the next application in a more detailed application form?
Thank you, Bailey. There isn't any access to be taken off that road, so there wouldn't really be any impact upon it. It's not proposed to use that road, to upgrade it, to do anything with it. It may well be that there are crossing points for pedestrians or cyclists or something, but all of that again will come before us at a later date. But you know, there's no proposals to use that road in order to provide a vehicular access to the site, so there aren't any likely impacts on it that would require the developer to do anything with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see there are no further questions. Just give it a second or two. No. Okay, can I ask for a motion? Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. My motion is to accept the application subject to the conditions outlined in the papers.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Allen. Oh no, sorry. I do apologise. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I'm happy to formally second.
Bailey Williamson, your motion, are you happy to accept the revised conditions and the...
Oh, yes, I do apologise, yes.
Yes, obviously.
Thank you. Do we have an amendment? No amendment, therefore permission is granted in line with the report of handling and with the added conditions. Thank you. So, subject to a section 75 as well. We move on to the next application. This is for an extension to a battery energy storage system facility comprising 144 additional battery units, 49.9 megawatt and associated works, land 130 metres southeast of Cooperangus substation, Pleasance Road, Cooperangus. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. As stated, the second major item on the agenda today is for the extension to an existing battery storage facility near Cooperangus. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. Here we have the location of the site. As seen, the site is to the south of Cooperangus, immediately southeast of the existing Cooperangus substation, with access being taken from Pleasance Road. The nearest residential receptors are located approximately 330 metres to the northeast on Pleasance Road itself. Conditional control is recommended to ensure that the amenity of these properties is not compromised. Otherwise, the site is surrounded by agricultural fields. Next slide, please. This plan shows what was previously approved in 2022 and has now been implemented. The facility consented was for 120 battery units. Next slide, please. Here we have the proposed site plan as part of this current application. As seen, it is not intended to extend the boundaries of the site and instead will intensify the existing compound by increasing the number of batteries from 120 to 264. The proposed additional 144 batteries will be similar in size and scale to the existing ones. Next slide, please. This plan shows a typical elevation. Consistent to the previous approval on the site, conditional control is recommended to control external finishing materials to ensure that they are recessive and natural. Also consistent to the previous approval, conditional control is recommended to ensure that the site is appropriately decommissioned should it become redundant. Next slide, please. We now have some proposed visuals of the site. The top image shows the site upon implementation, and the bottom image shows the site after year 5 of planting becoming established. Next slide, please. This next visual shows what the site will look like upon implementation, viewed from Pleasance Road, looking southwest. Please note that the pylons are already in situ and do not form part of this application. Next slide, please. This photograph shows the existing compound which is to be extended. The gate shown is the singular vehicular access to the site. Next image, please. This next photograph shows the compound again, this time viewed from a different angle. Next image, please. This final photograph shows the boundary to the north of the site where recent tree planting has taken place. Recommended conditional control will ensure that further planting is undertaken here to further reduce the visual impact of the intensified site. An acoustic fence is also proposed in this location, and conditional control will ensure its delivery. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call it Mr. Galloway? Mr. Galloway is an objector, and I'm aware that you thought you had 10 minutes to speak, and you've probably been trying to paraphrase your 10 minutes into 5 minutes. Mr. Galloway, I'll start the clock whenever you feel comfortable to start. And could I ask you to maybe turn the microphone towards your mouth so that people online and the public can hear. Thank you.
Is that on? Okay. Well, good morning and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. In June 2022, David Littlejohn stipulated in the original approval for this development that it was conditional on a number of factors being adhered to. It is clear that Gresham House has not adhered to several of these conditions, nor has in any way been punished or reprimanded for these violations, and we believe should therefore not be permitted to extend its operation on this site. These include, most importantly and concerningly, the fact that the Cooper Angus BESS is already creating unacceptable and constant noise pollution, which is affecting local residents. The noise mitigation for the current facility is not nearly adequate enough, and there is currently a live and open noise complaint about this facility with the environmental health officers at PKC since immediately after the facility started operating in January 2023. We are one of the neighbouring properties, and since then we hear a constant, loud, whirring noise and a subterranean rumbling, especially at night, especially when there is no wind or when the wind is blowing from the west, from the battery storage towards our house. This is audible inside the house all night with the windows closed. It never stops. In June 2023, a noise test was carried out to test these noise emissions, commissioned not independently but by Gresham House. It showed levels to be just under the permitted 33 decibels. We believe this test was flawed and is not credible for a number of reasons, and these include the wind direction was blowing away, not towards our property, as has been stipulated by the environmental health officer on the day of the test. It did not address at all the constant subterranean rumbling noise that we hear. It's not clear that the facility was operating at full capacity on the day of the test, which it should be to create the worst case scenario, again, which is stipulated by the environmental health officer. And there are serious questions we have about the positioning of noise receptors which produce the results. We believe the current battery storage is already exceeding the permitted noise limits, and this is before any additional batteries are permitted to be installed. In November 2023, Gresham House agreed to the environmental health officers at PKC to make improvements to the existing acoustic fence, including extending along the southeast side of the facility, where there is currently no acoustic protection, and also the potential to increase the height and the thickness of the current fence. Residents were informed by the environmental health officer in December 2023 that this would happen, and yet 10 months later, nothing has been done. And Gresham House have now said in this application that any improvements to the acoustic fence would be a condition of this application being approved for the site expansion. It's no surprise that the noise impact assessment for this application concludes that it remains compliant with the conditions. However, it also shows predicted noise levels for 264 batteries to increase to 32.3 decibels, and this is a mean average. So this is so close to the 33 decibel limit that this assumption needs to be rigorously tested and proven. The 13th of May letter from Alan Atkins at PKC confirms the additional acoustic fence should be built as part of or as a variation to Planning Permission 22/00195/FLM, which is the original planning application, the planning permission, not as part of this proposed expansion. So it should therefore be built and then measured and assessed for its effectiveness before any expansion is considered at all. So before approving this application to extend the battery storage, increasing the number of batteries from 120 to 264, we urge councillors, therefore, to require a properly independent noise assessment of the current facility. Sorry. Thank you. At times when it would be its loudest, not just on one arbitrary day, but over time, with the wind blowing from the west, when it's at full capacity, and with properly located control receptors, including an assessment of this subterranean rumbling. And only once this base assessment of what the battery storage site is currently emitting now has been established should the impact of adding 144 more batteries be calculated, and at that stage, the application reassessed. So as I've had to cut this very short, that was my main point I wanted to make, but there were a number of others to do with Gresham House not adhering to the same conditions that are essentially being proposed for this. The first of these is to do with the planting plan obligations. After 2 years, the planting is basically a mess. They actually destroyed some of their own planting that was put in, and we're back to year zero. I have a photograph of that I can pass to you. Okay, the very final thing I want to say is about the neglect of the track, the access track, and I'd be happy to take questions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Can I ask members to populate the chat box for questions? Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. Galloway, for your deputation. Quite worryingly, I was aware of the issues you were suffering, and I took a drive up to the site last night, and I'm astounded by the actual noise coming from it. So I kind of understand where you're coming from there. You also referred to about the issues with the roadway. It wouldn't be out of place in Afghanistan. What issues do those cause in general to you, sir, please?
So I missed the question there, Ian, sorry.
I said,
James.
The roadway, what issues does that cause for you? I noticed it was in a
Right.
real
Yes.
poor state. What issues was that road cause?
Thank you. If I may, I could just pass these photographs. Can I hold them up? Can I hold them up then? Okay, so this is a photograph of the access track. As part of the development, a new access track was built and is now managed by Gresham House. So in storms Babette and Gerrit in October and December last year, it washed almost all the gravel from the top of this track into critical drainage ditches which run alongside it. This completely blocked the ditches and contributed to the devastating flooding that we had at the nearby Tweedside cottages. And these are images of their track washed into the ditch. This is the state of the track. If you can see it, you can see the mesh coming from below. And here it is actually blocking the drain. There should be a drain there with water flowing underneath it. I'm sorry, I can't give you a clearer indication of that. Gresham had no idea that this flood had happened and their track had washed away. They completely denied any responsibility for it and has failed for 11 months. Yes, I'm answering the question about the track. They failed to come and... Yeah, Well, the impact is that it's blocking essential drainage ditches, and they still haven't come to clear it 11 months on. They actually asked us if we notice things like this to alert them in the future. They're expecting us to monitor their site for them. And this is a key general point, is that they don't monitor and they don't manage this site competently. And this is a very critical example. That ditch is still blocked. And we're now coming up to October, which is when Storm Babette happened. Thank you.
Councillor Allen. Sorry. Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Could you give me just a bit more of an understanding of this subterranean rumbling? How does that impact, within your property? You said that was within the property, so how is that impacting your domestic situation, and just a bit more information around that? Thank you.
Sorry, there's a constant noise, and we feel there are two types of noise. One is a whirring noise, and the other is it's just almost like a growling noise that you hear. I woke up last night actually at 3 o'clock in the morning, so very quiet outside, and you can hear both of those things. You can feel a growling noise. Rumbling is the best way to describe it, and then you can hear this a whirring noise, and our issue is that the noise test that was done, because we made we raised this, it was done on one day, and it was designed to be done when the wind was blowing in our direction. That was the date that was chosen. It happened to be blowing the other way, but the noise consultant came up from York and only had that day, so he did it on that day. And as a result, we've got a noise test that doesn't actually. They had to extrapolate from a control receptor what the actual noise being picked up at the property was, and so it hasn't really been done effectively. And even with that, it came out so close to what the permitted levels were that we believe it needs to be done properly. And so it impacts when the Northern Lights, a couple of months ago, I went outside to watch those, and the first thing that happened was I heard this growling and rumbling and whirring noise, and it's destroying our life.
So have you yourself considered conducting your own noise survey from a consultant, from an acoustic consultant?
It was one of my questions I had today, was that if we did that, would that be permitted as evidence? But it seems to me that it shouldn't be up to us to do that. The test was done, commissioned. It's supposed to be independent, so it's an independent noise consultant. I get that, but it's no surprise that it came out just under as a mean underneath the 33 decibels. And by the way they do that, if you've seen the noise report as part of the documents, they cut out readings before a certain time and after a certain time. And if you just add half an hour on to each of those, it actually comes out over 33. So there's some choices being made about the way in which the test is conducted, the positioning of the control test, which mean that actually we believe these results are not clear. Well, we would like an independent test done. That's the key, and not just on a one-off basis.
Yeah, I was just asking that because that would have maybe validated what you're suggesting in the other survey, if you had your own one conducted. But I'm understanding, I've got the understanding and feel of how this is impacting you. So thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Councillor James has asked part of my question, but come back to the track. It's not there obviously just for maintenance. It's there for emergency vehicles to get there, particularly fire engines if there should be a fire. So looking back at the track from your view, how bad is it for an emergency vehicle to get up there? Bear in mind there could be a major fire. Is access still available, or would it be difficult?
Thank you for that question. The site where the access track has been built, there are actually 2 points of access on that corner. So if you could still drive an emergency vehicle over it. The issue, I mean, but it's in a state of disrepair. I mean, if you were to look at it, you would see that the mesh is curled up. If children were playing it, they could injure themselves on it. There's more of an issue to do with overall flooding at that site that we raised when the original application was put in, which we've not mentioned this time, but during Babette and during Garrett, and not helped by this drain blockage caused by that track specifically. And you can tell it was that track because the color of the stone is different from the existing track. You can tell it's that that actually the SSE vehicles were not able to get down to the substation, which is right next to the battery storage. And in fact, we therefore have serious concerns about accessibility in the case of flooding, either on that track or on the other track that runs at right angles to it.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren's already asked my question, kind of, but I'll just kind of this noise assessment that was carried out. Was that carried out? It was carried out on the company's behalf. Was that carried out for a specific reason, or was it part of the planning, as far as you know, or was it due to complaints from yourselves? Thanks.
It was in response to, I'll get the hang of this eventually, to complaints and concerns raised by local residents, including ourselves. And the environmental health officer came along first and actually has been quite supportive, put up an interim test that was put inside our window, the west-facing window, and that showed enough concern from the results of that to warrant a request to Gresham to commission an independent noise assessment, which was then carried out. But in that request, it was specified that it should be done in the worst case scenario conditions, which means full capacity of the plant, the wind blowing from the right, and none of those things were in place. So that's the reason that we have an issue about, we know that it's a professional noise consultant who's kind of done the job, but the results have been extrapolated rather than being actually readings, and that's the problem. We also don't feel that it at all addressed the subterranean rumbling noise, because it just dismissed that, saying we couldn't hear it, or I can't remember what the words were. It wasn't. There was no. The noise was not present at this time. But we know that it is present because we hear it every day. Thank you.
Can I have a follow-up, Vice Convener? Sorry, as a question, yes. So when did the environmental health officer have any comment on the report himself at all? And as far as you're aware, that is.
Yes, what she said about it was, so I've got her emails here from September last year. It says, first of all, that the worst case scenario should always be assessed. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, she says, I can see the noise investigation report concludes that the existing levels are just below the conditioned level. It would be very likely that any extension would require a number of mitigation methods. She says, in terms of the report, as the wind direction wasn't southwesterly, measurements were undertaken on site, then calculations were undertaken for the levels at your property. And that you'll see in our objections. This is where the siting of the test or the control microphone was, which of course is almost north of the facility rather than west of the facility. So it wouldn't have picked up any of the wind, even on that day when the wind was blowing from the other direction. And that's so she she kind of reassured us that this would need proper mitigation for any expansion of this site. And what we're looking for is an assessment of what it's currently doing to make sure that that's compliant and robustly tested to make sure that that's the case before any additional capacity, significant additional capacity, is added.
Bailey McLaren.
Yeah, I was going to, thank you, ask you about Gresham House, how they have communicated with you. I'm presuming that you maybe alerted them to your concerns about this noise. How has that been handled by them as the owners and operators of this site? Is what I'd like to understand a bit better. Thank you.
As a general point, they basically disregard comments that are made by the public and take a long time to come back. They usually, for the track, for example, they absorb themselves of any responsibility for it. As far as this noise is concerned, as I mentioned, they promised 10 months ago, because it was raised and we engaged with them, and through the environmental health officer, they promised to build an additional acoustic fence down the southeast side of the facility. When you're on Pleasance Road, although the main side of the facility has this acoustic fence, there is a side which is completely exposed, and you can see the lights of the batteries and the inverters there. So it's very, it's open and exposed at the moment. So it may well be that a fence there would help. However, they just didn't do it, and they for 10 months they didn't do it. And then when this application for extension came through, they then linked that willingness, and they wrote that we have it in writing from the environmental health officer that they've agreed to build this. They linked it to the approval of the expansion, which is disingenuous and is not what they had originally said. So that gives you a sense of the way that we've had communication with them. It's always been polite. I've been reasonable. We've given them time, and it was the same with the planting. They didn't do anything with the planting plan. We're still at year 0. You saw the pictures that were put up on the screen there. That's planting after 2 years, and it's nothing.
Do you have a direct contact within Gresham House, a phone number and email address of a certain person to contact with issues?
Yes, we contact Charlie von Schmeider. There are others in as well who we communicate with, and I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but we have had direct communication, and that has, so it's not like we don't have any reply from them. They say that they'll do something and then nothing happens.
Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, convener. It sounds from what you're saying that some of this stuff is enforceable, and I'd really need to take advice from officers about how that relates to this application. But I do note that there are 4 further conditions that have been added to this application round about noise, and there's also conditions about landscaping. Could I ask, therefore, do you think those conditions are not going far enough, or they should go, probably further, or what?
As I said at the beginning, I think the problem with the conditions as we see it imposed on this application is that many of them are the same conditions that were applied to the original one. And we're in a unique position with this development. It's not a first time in a one-off development. They've already done it once, and now they're applying to do something similar again. So they have a track record of this. So I'm not sure what the additional planting is proposed to be. There is already planting which was neglected and fell into disrepair around the facility. I'm not sure what additional landscaping or planting, it's not clear to me what that is, so it's a question that I had because I didn't understand what that condition actually meant, and it would be interesting to see what that would mean. In terms of the additional acoustic fence, it does seem to me that the conditions are linking, as Gresham House have asked, the addition of the new acoustic fence with the installation of these new batteries. And as far as we're concerned, that should be put in anyway, based on the original approval that was given, not as a variation. I can't remember what the term was. A variation to the planning permission that had already been granted, and then it should be assessed to see whether it's making any difference or not. So we're concerned that it seems to be linking the noise prevention and abatement measures to this new application, as opposed to solving the issue which we already have on the original one.
So my direct question is, I don't feel my first question has been answered. Do you feel that these conditions are going far enough or not?
Sorry not to answer your question directly, but obviously the answer is no, because we don't believe that they are, that we don't believe they're enforceable, because you don't know what the current base level noise emission is, to then say that you can take measures to make it better, to make sure that the new level of noise emissions from double the number of batteries will be contained within a certain level. We think that that's not been done properly first time, and we don't believe it will be done this time. So no, the answer is no, we don't believe that, and we would like to see something very tangible, a condition put on this before the development is approved that makes sure that all these things are very clear. Because don't forget, there's another application coming for Market Hill for a battery storage, which we know is in the pipeline, which is much closer to houses on 4 sides, and therefore, I'm just saying that the issue of noise is important to get to the bottom of, because it's going to be relevant to not only to this application but to others, and therefore it's important to set a precedent.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thanks for your deputation. Just quite a simple question, really. How close are you to the site? I see there's some houses to the east are about 200 metres away. I think it's the closest. There's some to the south which are about 3/4 kilometre, and some to the southwest about 1.5 kilometres, but quite a lot around the Cooper Angus area. And how many of these your neighbours in that have raised and are concerned about their amenity from the noise and the rumbling perspective? Thank you.
We're probably the closest property to, well, one of the 3 or 4 closest properties to the battery storage facility, a few hundred meters away. I don't know the exact distance. The issue is that we're on raised land and directly to the west of the facility. Some of the other nearby properties are slightly in behind bankings and slightly to the slightly to the north. So we are the most exposed. But the conditions talk about any measured at any residential property, so that it's not about the number of properties affected. It's about, as we understand it, any residential property in accordance with the rules. So we're the closest, but also right in the line of the west wind, and it's worse when the wind is blowing from the west, because it comes straight towards us.
Thank you. That is helpful. Thanks.
Councillor Allen. Councillor Ellingworth.
Thank you. According to the report, it says that any extra noise with this application would be caused by extra inverters, but the report says we're not going to be any more extra inverters, so the noise impact will actually not be increased. Is that the case, do you think?
My understanding, like you, is that the majority or most of the noise comes from the inverters, but not all the noise. There is noise from the other equipment too. So I know that that's what they've stated. However, again, if it was shown that the actual noise emissions from the facility at the moment, with these inverters that are currently in place, are well below the the allowed limits, then you could extrapolate that an X number of batteries might be might be acceptable without any inverters. The problem is that we think that it's not below that level at the moment, or is very, very marginal, and therefore anything that you add, especially that number of batteries, is still going to increase the noise that's emitted from the facility. Yeah.
Councillor Allen, just to remind you that because you left the chamber, you will be unable to vote or participate in this item. Thank you.
Mr. Galloway, thank you for your deputation. There appears to be no further questions. We have deputations from Ms. Thomas, agent, and Mr. Kanalopoulos, applicant, and it's by telephone. Can I remind Ms. Thomas and Mr. Kanalopoulos that you might have to do *6 to enter into the chamber. Hello, can you hear us?
Hello, Ioannis Kanalopoulos. I'm speaking on behalf of Gresham House. I just wanted to mention some points from our side, starting with the access road.
Mr. Kanalopoulos, can you just give me a moment, please? Do you have Ms. Thomas with you?
I think that Mrs. Sharon Thomas has been dialed through another device. Sharon,
Okay.
can you hear us?
Ms.
Hi, I can
Kanalopoulos?
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Sharon.
loud. Both.
Yeah.
We can hear you both loud and clear. The
That's great.
process is that you have deputations of 5 minutes, and we'll hear Ms. Thomas first, please.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Ms. Thomas, I will start the clock, and I'll give you a prompt with 1 minute to go. So in your own time, please start.
Okay. Thank you. So my name's Sharon Thomas. I'm speaking from PWA Planning on behalf of the applicant Gresham House. Members may recall approving the original application for the battery energy storage development on this site in 2022. And as discussed, these works have commenced on site. This application to amend the approved layout has been submitted due to the evolving technology of the battery storage systems. The additional batteries proposed to be installed will ensure that the site is run more efficiently. This will mean that the energy balancing performance of the site is significantly increased, resulting in greater benefits than the originally approved scheme. The batteries are proposed to be sited on an area previously approved for hard standing, and the principle of the development has already been established, and there are no technical reasons as to why the application cannot proceed. I've just made some notes regarding the previous comments made regarding noise. We did submit an application for non-material variation to the application in 2022, and this was approved on the 13th of May of 2024, and that was for the installation of an additional acoustic fence. And I've also noted that on this current application, that condition 14 linked to that permission for that fence to be installed prior to any installation of the additional batteries. So that would then answer some of the queries that have been brought up previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Mr. Kanalopoulos, would you like to make a deputation?
Yes, of course.
Okay, whenever When you're ready to start, I will start the timer. Please proceed.
My first point is regarding the noise methodology that followed for the noise assessment conducted on Mr. Galloway's house. And I want to mention that we sent a professional acoustic consultant to conduct that. And of course, if you read the report, this follows the British standard regulations. So if we want to conduct a noise assessment, we should, in the UK, we should follow the British standard regulation. So I don't think that we have done something wrong in terms of the way that we conduct the assessment. This is the first point. The second point is regarding the additional 144 batteries that we will install. We have conducted a noise model as part of this application in order to understand if we need any further noise mitigation measures. The model resulted that we don't need any mitigation measure. However, Gresham House wants to install an additional acoustic fence, and this is something that, as Sharon Thomas mentioned, that's why we have applied as a non-material variation, and this is something that we want to install during the construction of phase 2. But apart from that, we can see that the main noise sources in a battery storage project are the inverters and not the batteries. This is regarding for the noise, and we feel very confident that with the additional extra acoustic fence, we will not receive any more complaints from the neighbors. Now, we totally appreciate the issue happened from the huge flood last year, and we know that there are access road issues and there are ditches that needs to be cleared, and this is for this reason we have received 1 week ago a quotation from a subcontractor to repair the road, to clear the ditches and the garden that has a blocked door, according to the emails, and this can take place next week. So in terms of the access road and blocked ditches from the storm, this is something that we can manage next week. We have received a quotation from the subcontractor and he's stand by to start. I don't have any other points to mention. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your deputations. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Councillor Braun, can we have your first question, please?
Yeah, first, good morning, and thank you for your deputations. The first question is regarding the acoustic fence. As referred, this was a condition of the original application. I just wonder why it wasn't completed at the time. Why it wasn't completed.
Sharon, please let me answer on that. This is not the case because we have installed the acoustic fence. We just applied for an additional one. There is an acoustic fence on this project.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. You're mentioning that you will have the road or the drainage sorted out, although struggling to get the exact with you being online. You're saying that this will happen next week. The issue arose circa, 10, 11 months ago. So why has the reaction time to this situation been so slow? Because it's clearly causing an issue for the local residents. And I would just like to understand why that has happened. Is there a process that you don't have in place? Or could you just explain that further for me? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Actually, we investigate all the damages. We had to receive and communicate with the subcontractors. I know that this took a little bit longer, but right now Gresham House is in a position to repair everything, both access road and the ditches and your garden, of course. And this is something that is ready to be done by next week. Next week, the subcontractor can mobilize and start repairing work. Thank you.
Do you accept that this do you accept that this is something that is causing a friction with the local residents, this reaction time being so slow? Yes, I'm hearing that you're saying you will be addressing it, but it has taken a long time.
I appreciate that. At the same time, we have to follow our internal procedures and find the best solution for the site.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Mr. Kaniopoulos, just to kind of follow on from Councillor Braun's question, so the acoustic fence that you have up now would probably be inadequate for the expansion, and therefore that's why you're building or proposing a bigger or better acoustic fence. Is that correct?
This is not exactly the correct statement. I'm going to answer this way. Before we conduct and install any extra acoustic fence, we should run, of course, a noise model. We have conducted that. We ran a noise model, and the noise model with the additional 144 batteries result that we don't exceed the noise levels. So we complied with the noise limits. However, Gresham House decided to install an additional acoustic fence on the east side of the project, because we want to avoid any further complaints, to keep the neighbors happy. It's just a part of our goodwill from our side that we decided to do that. According to the noise report, we don't need to install any further acoustic fence because we comply with the noise limits. However, I'm going to say again, we're going to do it.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener. And Mr. Kaniopoulos, thanks for your deputation. I too, like some of my colleagues, have real concerns, and mine are unsurprisingly around the noise. You're more than doubling the capacity here of batteries from 120, up to 160 odd. And I take it that the batteries, because I went out to have a look, and the noise actually surprised me, but the batteries are cooled by fans, and surely that would create a noise, and therefore there will be a noise impact. So we haven't addressed the noise problem that there is at the moment. So are you actually convinced that there will be no more impact to the noise? Because I think creative administration of a test.
Councillor James, you need to be careful not to be expressing
your
opinion.
Okay, fine. In that case,
there are assessments.
Are you sure
you
there's
can ask
no
officers?
Yeah, my question is: are you absolutely sure that the addition of double the amount will not create extra noise? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm absolutely sure for that. Actually, my background is in noise and vibration and applied acoustics. I have a master's degree on that. I can answer this question. I know that very well that the main noise sources are the inverters on the side. Of course, the batteries have fans inside, but this doesn't mean, because it's are containerized, so everything is closed. I'm pretty sure and I'm pretty confident with the extra additional acoustic fence that we're gonna start, we're gonna solve this problem. I'm pretty confident about that. And as I told at the beginning, we have run a noise model for that, an acoustic model before the installation, and we complied with the limits. We don't need any further noise mitigation measures. However, Gresham House will install an additional extra acoustic fence on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Given your background, this might be quite a good question then. Did you ever consider putting a bund up to try and mitigate the noise? It seems to be one we see quite often with these type of applications that come forward. Thank you.
Yeah, actually there are two solutions in order to mitigate the noise. The first one is to go to the receiver, and the other one is to go directly to the noise source. So in this situation, the best scenario, the best mitigation method that we can apply for this project is to add an additional acoustic fence, as we're gonna do.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Great, thank you. Mr. Do you have any hard timescales for building the extra acoustic fence?
It will take maximum, because we have to consider the lead time. We have to place the order, let's say, I can say maximum to 1.5 months, 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. No surprise, my question's to do with noise, but this time, this concern over subterranean rumbling. 2 points. Do you have any idea what might be causing that? And have you any intention to investigate what's causing it?
Sorry about that. If this is a question for me, for Ioannis Kanellopoulos, can you please repeat it, because I lost a little bit the signal?
Yep. Okay. It's 2 points really. Your thoughts on the cause of the subterranean rumbling we've heard, and what would you consider doing to investigate it?
Yes, we are happy to investigate that, but I'm pretty sure that this is something that can sort it out after the additional acoustic fence. But this is something that probably is not from our project. As you know, there is a DNO substation next to the project, so sometimes it's very difficult to clarify it from where is the location of the noise source. Why we should consider that this is from our project? We are happy to investigate as part of the noise assessment.
Thank you for that. But a subterranean noise, I mean, I'm not an expert, but from my basic physics, an acoustic fence won't prevent subterranean noise. So acoustic fence is not relevant on this question. And do you think it's a matter that you should investigate, at least to eliminate your side from the problem?
Yes, we'll have to investigate.
Councillor James.
Thanks for indulging me, Convener. Mr. Kanellopoulos, seems to be the noise seems to be the issue coming from the inverters. Have you, as a company, considered either attenuation measures on the inverters you have, or the possibility of replacing for newer, quieter inverters?
Yes, we have to we can investigate to proceed with noise mitigation measure around the inverters. There are in some inverters there are special noise kits that we can consider, but the replacement of the inverters, it's not. It's gonna bring. It's not something so cheap. You can to go on site from a technical perspective, from an economical perspective, and change the inverters. But apart from that, we can go step by step. What can I suggest? And take it split just a suggestion after, because I feel very confident for that. After the installation of the additional acoustic fence, we are happy to conduct a noise assessment and see the result. If there are still complaints from the neighbors, we can proceed with the next noise mitigation that is going to be to mitigate the inverters, to go with to apply actual noise kits in the inverters, or maybe acoustic fan around the inverters, because there is an option as well. You can go inside the project and you can install an acoustic fan around the inverters particularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas and Mr. Kanopoulos. There's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Before we go on to questions for officers, can I remind the members of what I asked of the deputations at the beginning, that you keep your questions relevant to the item of business being discussed, please. Can I ask if members have any questions for officers? Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's just to try and get some clarity, because I'm a bit confused about what is essentially enforcement action required on a previous application and what is essentially a new application with additional conditions put on it for an extension. So I was just wondering if we could get some clarity on what we're trying to get here.
Yes, so just to confirm, at this moment in time, we do not have an active enforcement case on the site. If this application is granted today, because it's a major application, our monitoring officer will make routine visits to the site to check compliance with all conditions. So if it's granted today, you have assurance that because it's a major application, our monitoring officer will be keeping track that conditions are complied with. But there isn't currently an enforcement case on the site because there is no breach of planning at present.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Surprisingly, back on the question of noise, I note that the Lynn is online. This subterranean noise concerns me. Do we have any comments on that?
Lynn.
Councillor Braun, Environmental Health have been out to the deputy's property, and we have never witnessed any rumbling or humming noise within the property at all. The complaint is still open, and we are waiting for the deputy to come back to us with a date and time that is suitable with the one direction in which he states that the noise is more prominent. There has also been 3 independent noise consultant reports done on this site, and each one has clarified, and all their levels are consistent with each other for the 122 batteries that are already operating at the site and the inverters. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Braun.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Maybe a slight follow-on actually to what you've replied there. The acoustic survey, the deputy in the room had suggested that the acoustic survey was maybe carried out at a point of day when the weather was more favourable. In your professional opinion, do you believe that that acoustic survey is adequate enough to provide the results, being that the results are very close to the tipping point of requiring other measures, noise reduction measures.
Yeah, we're satisfied, and I think in the last memo states that we're satisfied with the outcome of the of the latest noise impact assessment when it was done at full 100% capacity, and that the One Direction has been taken into consideration, and each individual, 3 individual noise impact assessments all concluded that the levels from the existing conditions could be met without the additional noise barrier. So the applicant has stated that they are willing still to put that noise barrier in, even though the noise impact assessments are stating that the levels can be met even without that extension of the noise barrier.
Thank you, Lynn. I'll just come in there for members' clarity. The acoustic fence that we're referring to here was not a condition on the previous permission. That was a gesture of goodwill from the applicant upon receipt of their previous planning permission. So if they don't put that acoustic fence in just now, there is no hook for the planning authority to say you have to do it. However, if this application is granted today, we're applying it as a condition. So if it's not applied as part of the extension, then we have a hook. But just to remind members that that acoustic fence was not required for the first application, and it was a gesture of goodwill from the applicant.
Thank you for that, Mr. Panton. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think Sean has actually answered that in part there as to the condition before. But again, a question for you, Lynn. The noise report, as we've heard in the deputation there just now, it seems to me like it's a clever administration of it. Where several readings were taken, and you take a mean, and there are times when that reading was above the 33 decibel rate. So if you're taking an average, if it's close as it was anyway, 32.3. But
Councillor James, can you get to the question, please?
The question is, okay, would you think that the reading, even if it went above 33 decibels, is unacceptable at any point rather than a mean? Thank you.
Councillor James, I'll answer that one for you. Just to confirm, condition 10 on the consent says that it shall not exceed 33 decibels at any point. So if it does exceed 33 decibels, that is a breach of planning and our enforcement team can intervene. But there is a condition limiting it to 33 decibels.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. Just back to the extra acoustic fence. My understanding with the deputations was that there was a non-material variation which would have been part of the previous application. When was that? And is that the same as what you're saying, that is the extra fence? Then surely if it's a non-material variation, it should still be conditionable. Right, I'm going to get a wee education here on what non-material variation and whether they're conditionable here is. And just ask when was that, and why is it, we're getting told in a few weeks it's going to get put in. Why was it not put in last week? If there's clear, there's clear concern within the community over their amenity with that. But thank you.
Okay, so to set it out, when the application was granted in 2022, there was no requirement for this acoustic fence. Now, a non-material variation is when an applicant applies to us to make a minor tweak to the application that is being granted. So it's a tweak that's just something minor. It doesn't require a fresh application. So in this instance, they said, we'll put an additional acoustic fence in, and they applied for that as a non-material variation. So it was a variation to that 2022 application that was granted. Okay, are you with me so far? Yeah. So when that is granted, when the application was granted, there was no condition requiring the implementation of that fence, and we can't then apply conditions retrospectively once the permission's been granted. So it's then up to the applicant to choose whether they wish to implement that non-material variation or not. Okay. Does that make sense? So there's no hook for us just now to say you must deliver that fence, because it was just a variation, and it's in their gift to either go with the variation or go with what was originally consented, and what was originally consented didn't include the fence. Hopefully that's clear.
Okay. And it's a separate permission. Okay, but I'd remind the evidence that's been presented us today that there's not a requirement for that fence to meet with the standards. So again, it's a measure of goodwill to say, okay, we will put some additional mitigation in that may well further reduce the noise levels which don't exceed the standards.
I think just there's no legal enforcement ability on an NMV is basically.
Sorry, I forgot where I was there. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. I would just like to go to the subterranean noise a wee bit more closely. The deputy, Mr. Galloway, had suggested that this had only started when the site was activated. What can we do? Is there anything further that we can do to address this or ensure that that is where that is coming from?
I think your question's already been answered by Lynn. So when she was there, she didn't notice any subterranean noise. But
yeah, I can quickly come in. So condition 11 will protect us there, Bailey McLaren. So if there's a justified complaint, so if environmental health go out and they do notice a subterranean rumbling, we can investigate and require that applicant does survey work to that effect. So condition 11 will protect us there if there is justifiable evidence that there is rumbling. And like Lynn has already said, they've been out to the property and there isn't justifiable evidence of that at this point.
So if the applicant, if the deputy, I picked up that he felt that that was more overnight noise, we wouldn't be making a visit to that property overnight, would we?
No, but if the deputy could record that somehow and provide evidence to us, we would take that. It doesn't have to be that our environmental health team are there at 1 in the morning, for example.
I'm sure Ms. Reid will be able to explain, but they do have noise monitoring equipment that can be put into properties for that purpose, especially for the overnight.
Yeah, that's
Thank
correct.
you. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you. I see no further questions. Anybody? Oh, Councillor Waters.
Well, thank you, convener. The back to the previous issue with this fence and the NMB, and you say that's getting included in the new conditions. Condition 14 on page 9A1 of our pack says that the acoustic fence hereby approved as part of the planning permission, you know, but you're sitting saying that that isn't part of that, or is it? Is the extra fence part of that? Because you're in one bit you're saying it's not legally, so it's not part of that planning permission, but in this one you're saying it is. So but the way I'm reading it, I'm trying to understand, is that condition strong enough to ensure that you know, I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that doubts there's a residential amenity issue within here, and it's absolutely essential that as part of this condition, given the goodwill of the applicant to give this extra acoustic fence, is this condition strong enough to absolutely assure that that will be in place pre any of this new application taking place? And I think absolutely essential we get that this is as strong as it can possibly be.
Yeah, so the short answer is the condition is absolutely robust to ensure that this acoustic fence is delivered. I would point out that it's prior to it becoming operational and not prior to the additional batteries coming on site and being installed, the construction phase. It's prior to it being operational. But in answer to your question, yes, the condition is robust to ensure the delivery of the acoustic fence.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question. It's a very quick question. Has any officers visited this site?
Yes, I've been out myself, and so is the case officer. And as you've heard from Lynn Reid from Environmental Health have been out to Deputy's property.
Yeah, and I've also visited the site a number of times.
Thank you. No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey Williamson.
My motion is to accept the application subject to the conditions within the paper, plus the additional reassurance we're given in committee about the enforcement officer monitoring the site.
And Councillor Illingworth, you're seconding.
Sorry, Councillor Massey, can I just jump in there? So first of all, Bailey Williamson, because it's a major development, we have a statutory duty to monitor it, so we have to monitor it. But secondly, if you'd be happy to incorporate into your motion, we just noticed a couple of typos in the conditions. Condition 5, it says suitable sustainable. It should be suitable sustainable. Also a tailpiece there to put in writing. Condition 11, just to clarify, it needs to come to us for approval. And condition 16, a tailpiece there about recommendations being adhered to. Are you happy to incorporate those small typos into your amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth, you're seconding.
I'm happy to second.
Councillor James, you have an amendment.
Yes, I do, convener. As somebody with severe hearing problems and a former sufferer of tinnitus, if you hear a noise, you can't unhear it sometimes. And I think this, I was actually shocked. I went out there yesterday at tea time and shocked at the actual noise coming from it. I didn't expect it to be that noisy. So I would like to defer. I don't know if it's possible, Mr. Elliott, to do it this way, but defer for a proper noise assessment to be done at worst case scenario before anything else is done. You know, before we agree to extend the capacity of this site. You know, because we're not just adding a couple of batteries, we're more than doubling it. It's, you know, over the original, you know, over 100% of the original value. So I'd like to defer it to carry out noise assessment. If that isn't possible, then I would refuse the application at this time. So
Councillor James, we have had a independent noise assessment done, so I don't understand why you want to defer for.
Okay, my point, convener, is, you know, it's like doing your books for a small business. You know, you can do creative accounting. In this case, I'm just concerned. I shouldn't say this out loud, should I? I have done anyway. I'm just concerned that a noise report is done, but it's done on a tabletop afterwards. You take a series of readings. Now, some of these readings, if you look at, I think it was, I can't remember.
Councillor James, can I interrupt you, Councillor James? You're really, I mean, you've questioned the validity of an independent noise assessor. Noise assessment is done in a certain way. I assume that every single noise assessor follows the strict rules and how they interpret these results. I would be careful how much more you say about that.
Yeah, okay. My point is, convener, that there is an upper limit and a lower limit, and you take the mean. The upper limit is the bit that's causing the issue. So depending where you take that reading is fine. So in that case, convener, I'll go refusal on the grounds of NPF 4, policy 11, E1. In addition, project designs and mitigation will demonstrate how the following impacts are addressed. Noise in that, and the cumulative impact, which is E13. Because if we're adding to it, I don't believe that the extra batteries will cause zero noise. I think it will only increase. I'd also go to policy 14 and where it says health. It was development proposals will be supported where they are consistent with 6 qualities of successful places. And the first one being health, improving physical and mental health. This must be driving the people crazy, noise you can't get out of your head. And C, developments that are poorly designed, detrimental to the amenity of the surrounding area. This is detrimental to the amenity. It's the noise amenity. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor James, I haven't looked at the policy basis that you've just narrated. I will do so if required, but I think the issue here is that yes, you have to state the policy, but you then have to say where it's breached. And obviously, I always ask, what evidence do you have? And the context you have here is you have, yes, there's been previous noise assessments, but there's a current noise assessment, which has followed, as I understand it, the correct methodology and has been accepted by our own officers. And I've not heard you to say that you have your own noise assessment to counter that. And of course, obviously I'm thinking of other situations where we've been there before. And should this end up in appeal, it would be onus on you to justify your grounds of refusal. And of course, then you have to think about the conditions and whether the conditions are sufficient to deal with the issues. Of course, there's an additional acoustic fence to go in, and if there's a justified noise complaint, then it gets looked at. So really, I have to kind of, the deferral, your original deferral motion, it would be what additional would be produced when you've already got a noise assessment accepted by our officers. In terms of refusal, it's what evidence do you have to say that that noise assessment is wrong from a technical point of view?
And this is where we hear time and time again, Mr. Elliott, you know, we defer to the experts, and the experts know the best because they've done an ology and written a great report. However, the person that's living with that issue on a day-to-day basis, like I said, as somebody who suffered with tinnitus and had to have an operation to get rid of it, once you hear it, you can't unhear it, and it does affect your mental health. So, you know, I defer to the resident or the residents, plural, as the experts in this matter. They can hear it. Whether that stands up in a court of law, it doesn't. So
yes, well, yeah, I think the last point is appropriate, Councillor James, in the sense that it isn't about. It's about measured levels. So it is possible that noise could be heard, but whether it breaches the measured level set. So you really have to concentrate on the, and yes, I appreciate what you're saying about technical assessment, but you do have to concentrate on that and whether there's any technical evidence to say that that is wrong. And I appreciate where you're coming from. I do get the situation and suffer tinnitus myself. So I understand where you're coming from, but you have to go by the kind of technical assessment and be able to show that is wrong.
Can I also just clarify as well that this application is for additional batteries. It is not for additional inverters and transformers, and it's the inverters and transformers that are the dominant polluters here with regards to noise. The batteries themselves do not make noise, and this application is for additional batteries.
I get that, Sean, but with my point, which I've tried to make earlier, is that yes, I agree, it's for double the amount of batteries, you know, 164, you know, the numbers are just out in my head now. However, they need cooling, and it'll be the cooling fans which are creating the problems at the moment. If you're doubling the capacity, you're going to need to double the cooling, and we've already heard that the decibel level is 32.3. Is it going to tip that over the edge? I would have thought so. Yeah, it's highly likely. But the applicant,
Councillor James, it won't. How will it tip it over the edge? Are you? What is your amendment? What are you stating as your amendment? We need to move on.
Okay, to refuse on the grounds which I've already stated. Policy 11E1, which is noise. Policy 11. X3 cumulative impact. So the cumulative impact will be the doubling of the capacity. Policy 14, health. It has to be consistent with 6 qualities, healthy. It's clearly having a mental health issue with the residents around there. It's causing problems. And 14C, development proposals that are poorly designed, detrimental to the amenity of the surrounding area with the 6 qualities will not be supported. That's in NPF 4. I'm just reading it off the screen here now. And I haven't even looked at LDP, to be honest, because I'm limited to screen space.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come back. Now, Councillor Braun, you put in a second or as for the deferral. Now, are you still want to second this amendment?
Thanks, Convener. As you say, I was putting a second in for a deferral, and I wonder if that could be just investigated a little bit more, because my thoughts were that there appear to be some breaches of conditions of the original application here. Not saying there appear to be. And I also have this concern about this subterranean rumbling, which acoustic fences won't stop and wind won't affect. If a deputy comes forward and says it's there, then I feel that's a matter that should be investigated. Now, my thoughts were that this should be deferred to try and resolve this. It may be a problem with the construction of the batteries themselves, how they're based. Now, in my mind, if we deferred this for 1 or 2 months, that wouldn't be any matter to the applicant. It would be fair to both sides, because if it isn't a problem with the storage facility, then it's better that they're cleared effectively. That's not their problem. But I do feel that this is an important matter that needs to be investigated, and I think it's a matter which we should be looking into. And I think the deferral for 1 or 2 months while it's looked into and investigated would not be a detriment to either side, and that'd be fair to both sides, I think, rather than refuse it. But Mr. Reddick, you're going to give me some advice on that, I can tell.
I think, Councillor Braun, if I could come in, the fundamental point in the deferral like that would be that is actually looking at something which, well, frankly, has been looked at by our environmental health. They've said they haven't heard anything. But the most important point is that's the existing situation. That isn't the application. So you're looking at something that isn't, strictly speaking, relevant to this application. Beyond that, you've actually had noise assessment done to indicate that this is meeting the levels and doesn't even require an acoustic fence, although that's provided. So you have to think about where you're going with this in terms of what would the deferral be for. You would actually be looking at other matters rather than this application. So that in that sense, you shouldn't be doing that. Appreciate that the deputation is saying he hears it. Environmentalists say at this point in time they've not heard it. But if you step back and look at the application, you have a noise impact assessment that's been accepted by officers. So what would the deferral actually achieve in terms of this application?
I suppose the thought is that to eliminate any, it goes back, as you say, it's to the existing structure. But if we're adding to that structure, then are we going to increase the problem?
Well, you're also assuming it's the existing structure, because we've also heard it might not be. It might be the neighbouring substation.
That's the point. My deferral was for that it could be investigated, and if it's eliminated from this site, then that benefits both the applicant and
the last thing I will say is, of course, I've said a few things there as to you need to have a purpose, should have a purpose in deferral, and from what you're indicating, it isn't related to this, directly to this application. The other thing you would risk is a non-determination appeal. So you would lose control. I don't know, but it's just an option.
Councillor Braun, can I establish here, are you seconding Councillor James' motion, or are you putting forward an amendment of your own?
No, I was investigating whether the deferral was possible. It obviously seems to be not. So I'm going to second Councillor James's amendment. And I think perhaps NPF 29 should be considered as well.
Right, we have 2 points of clarity here. Can I ask Councillor Waters first?
Thank you, convener. And it kind of follows on a bit what Councillor Braun was chatting about and the competence of a deferral. My ask was that over the fencing, we had the deputation, the applicant, and that say that, you know, kind of either next week or in a month or 2 months. I wasn't quite sure what the conclusion was, that the new acoustic fencing is due to be installed, and I was just wondering if there's any competency in going for a deferral to get that installed, and then see if the residential amenity within the area has improved quite drastically. Thank you.
I can answer that for you, Councillor Waters. So like Mr Elliott said to Mr Braun, that's kind of drifting into the realms of assessing the old application rather than the one that's before you today. However, what I can say, like said earlier, is if this application is approved with that condition, it gives us a hook for the delivery of that fence. If it's deferred today, we have no hook to deliver that fence, but we do if this is approved with the condition.
Thank you.
Does that not mean it is part of this application then?
If approved today with that condition, it becomes part of this application. It is not part of this application until the condition is applied.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren, you have a point of clarity.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to labour on this slightly. Is it an option if there was Councillor Braun brought forward his deferral, that is an ask for the deputy to provide an acoustic survey of their own, given that there's where our concerns are coming. I'm seeing your answer. That's where I thought you were sitting with it. So thank you.
The difficulty with that is that you would be asking an individual member of the public to incur fairly considerable costs. So I think I would discourage that. You know.
I'd also remind you as well, we have already had 3 independent surveys done, all reached the same conclusion. So another survey is likely to reach the same conclusion.
Thank you. Mr Elliott, are you ready to sum up?
Well, we'll be summing up in the mover of the motion. But I think what we have at the moment, before we go to the summing up by the mover of the motion, is just clarify. My recollection is it's approval with the technical amendments by Bailey Williamson and Councillor Illingworth, and the amendment put forward, which I'm about to look to try and narrate, is by Councillor James and Councillor Braun. So in terms of refusal, it would be refuse on the basis the proposal is contrary to NPF, National Planning Framework 4 policy. Now, this is where I'm stopping because, pause a second if I can find it. Here we go. Councillor James mentioned policy 11, and it's E. And I know you mentioned other aspects, but the most direct one I see is E1, 11E, subdivision 1, impacts on communities and individual dwellings, including residential amenity, visual impact, and its noise and shadow flexure, but obviously a concentration on the noise. And you also mentioned policy 14. However, Councillor James, I would say that's a very, very general policy, but livable. It's an extremely high level. I would point out to you in terms of noise that there is policy 23, which is about health and safety, and policy 23 division E, development proposals that are likely to raise unacceptable noise issues will not be supported. It does say a noise impact assessment may be required where the nature of the proposal or location likely suggests that significant effects are likely. So I think that would be much more direct than policy 14, and I see you're nodding your head. And for sake of completeness, the LDP policy on noise is 56, presumption against citing your development proposals generate high levels of noise in the locality. Now, so what I've got at the moment is reviews on the basis of proposal is contrary to NPF4 policy 11E1 and policy 23E, as well as local development plan policy 56. I'm paraphrasing slightly, of course. As now you have to state the as. I think it has not been demonstrated that there won't be a significant adverse impact on the residential amenity via noise on the local community. Something like, is that roughly where you're thinking, Councillor James?
Absolutely, Colin. You're far more eloquent than I am, and I'm whizzing through the documents in front of me, but you've pretty much summed up what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Okay, so just to recap, I think we're there. We have motion by Bailey Williamson and seconded by Councillor Illingworth to grant with some technical amendments to conditions, and the amendment by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Braun, is to refuse on the basis proposals contrary to NPF4 policy 11E1, policy 23E, and local development plan 56, as it has not been demonstrated that there will not be a significant adverse impact on the residential amenity of the local community by way of noise, the noise impact. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask members if they have any comments on the report? I have a couple of comments. We have listened to the report from Mr. Panton. We have also listened to the Lynn about the noise. This seems to be all about noise at the moment. We also listened to Lynn about noise, and there's been 3 assessments done of the noise. Each have had the same conclusion. The applicant has, and under his own will, said that he will put in an extra fence, noise preventing fence. I cannot see how this can be challenged by the amendment. I think the amendment's very weak. So I will be voting for the application to be approved. We have a comment from Councillor James. Councillor James, wait a minute. You can't comment at the moment. Councillor McLaren, sorry.
Thank you. Just a very broad comment. This application is throwing up quite an emotive subject of noise and impact of noise. And I would say that thank you for the robust discussion and understanding from officers as well. So I'm just noting the overall concern that sits out there about noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor James, as the proposer of the amendment, you can sum up if you wish.
Thanks, convener. And to be honest with you, I agree with all the points that you've made. Our officers do a great job. However, you know, when folks are telling us there's a massive issue, we do have to listen. And I think on balance, then I think we're doing the right thing. So I would urge you to vote with the amendment on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bailey Williamson, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, I think this is important to remember that this paper is basically giving officers additional powers to take enforcement action against any noise, and I think it's comforting that the developer has volunteered to put in additional noise mitigation measures. So, yeah.
Thank you. We've already had the terms of the motion from Mr. Elliott, so I'll now move to the clerk for the roll call. Right.
Thank you, convener. Members, when I call your name, please let me know if you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Allen, because you left the meeting, I can't permit you to vote. Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Harvey.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Motion.
Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion. Oh.
Thank you all. I have 7 votes for the motion and 3 for the amendment, and therefore the motion will carry.
Thank you very much. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted in line with the amendments. Okay, folks, we're going to take a 10-minute break, comfort break. Okay, thank you. Okay, folks. Right, move on to the next application, which is for the siting of 22 holiday accommodation units. Start again. Actually, I've just noticed Colin's not sitting next to me. My left-hand man's not sitting next to me. Right, we're going to have to give it a minute. Okay then, it's for the siting of 22 holiday accommodation units, change of use and alterations to storage building to form event space, formation of vehicle access, outdoor seating area and associated works at Murray's Hall House Hotel, Murray's Hall, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. As stated, the first local item on the agenda today is for a tourism-related development at Murray's Hall House Hotel, Perth. Members may recall that planning permission in principle was granted in December 2023 for a mixed-use leisure development. Whilst the application before you today is not an approval of matters of that in principle application, the site is located within the boundaries of the in principle application, and thus the planning permission in principle is a significant material consideration in the determination of this application. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. Here we can see the location of the site, which is located towards the rear of the existing hotel building next to the golf course. The site forms part of the Perth Greenbelt. Next slide, please. This plan now shows the indicative master plan, which associated the aforementioned planning permission in principle. The yellow arrow points towards Area 2, which was indicatively allocated for a proposed hotel extension and luxury cabins. The proposal before you today is within the area which was indicatively allocated for this use. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan. 22 glamping pods are proposed. Of these 22 units, 18 of them are 1-bedroom pods and 4 of them are 2-bedroom pods. The storage building to be altered as part of this application is the grey shaded building to the right of the site. Next slide, please. This landscaping plan shows the site layout more clearly. You can see the general arrangements of the pods proposed. The 4 larger pods are located to the southeast edge of the site. Please note that the 2 existing buildings you can see to the southwest of the site are associated with the wider hotel and are not private residences. Next slide, please. Here we see a typical elevation for the smaller of the pods, for which 18 are proposed. These units are approximately 5.8 metres in length, 3 metres in width, and 3.1 metres in height. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed elevations of the larger of the pods, for which there are 4. These units measure approximately 12.8 metres in length, 6.8 metres in width, and 3.85 metres in height. Next slide, please. We now have a proposed visual showing what the lodges will look like. You can see how it is intended to integrate the lodges with the existing landscaping. Next slide, please. Here we have the proposed elevations to the existing storage building. As seen, the alterations are sensitive to the host building and in keeper with the wider estate. Next slide, please. We now move to a series of photographs. This first image shows the existing hotel facility. The site before you today is located behind the hotel, approximately where the pink arrow is. Next image, please. This next image is taken from the approximate location of the site boundary, looking back towards the main hotel building. Next slide, please. This photograph shows the site under question, where the pods are to be located. The yellow arrow denotes existing accommodation associated with the hotel, and the blue arrow is the hotel building itself. Next slide, please. This final photograph shows the site, denoted by the red arrow, when viewed from the golf course. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you for that, Mr. Panton. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Miss Elphinstone and Mr. Butler? You are doing separate deputations, but you're coming up together, just to let members know. Mr. Butler, you have 5 minutes for your deputation. I'll give you a prompt with 1 minute to go, and in your own time.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address you again around the Murray's Hole development. I want to state at the start that we do not strongly oppose, neither Marion or myself, what is actually proposed, but we're seeking to help councillors make the right determination with the right conditions in place. There are 3 areas we want to cover. I'll cover 2 and Marion will cover the 3rd. Their process, transport and the pods themselves. Those are the 3 areas. Well, to start really with reminding you that the developer has not done what you as a committee asked them to do, which was update the original master plan and the phasing plan. That was condition 1 of the approval in principle. This would actually allow all of the applications, including this one, to be properly considered in a clear context, which would not shift around. The master plan overall imposed onerous conditions. The developer has chosen to avoid these and advance what is a large project as a series of smaller applications without this new approved master plan in place. The paper before you highlights only the positive aspects of the original master plan. Members, I'm sure, will remember there was considerable time spent raising other conditions attached, and they were attached to the master plan. So the developer continues to be disingenuous and slippery in our view. This makes the job not just of us, but of officers and of you as councillors to get the development right, because we support in principle that, almost impossible. So we would strongly urge councillors to insist, as part of any determination on this application, that a revised master plan is consulted upon with local communities and presented for approval before any further applications can be considered. Second issue, transport. We commend the attempts by the transport section of PKC to apply the right level of scrutiny to this application. We know it's been hard work to get the information from the developer who has consistently underplayed or misrepresented the impact of their plans on traffic and wider infrastructure throughout the process. The last public document on the PKC website, less than a month ago, relating to the assessment of the PKC's professional transport team was clear. The application could not be supported. There is no audit trail from that clear statement to the no objection included in the paper before you. We would urge councillors to require the audit trail for the change of position on transport to be properly documented and made public for reasons of transparency. There are 3 other quick points on transport which members of the committee may wish to address. We suspect councillors might be confused as we are about the 48,000 upfront enabling works on the roads. It seems this sum will be provided to PKC, but the delivery will be undertaken by the developer. That makes no sense to us. So clarification on the record, we hope, will be possible now in this committee. Just to note, one of the proposed passing spaces involves presumed use of land which is privately owned, the driveway to Bonnard House on Bonnard Road. The owner, who is a member of the local residents group, as we are, has not been approached by either the developer or PKC about this, and in his absence today, I can confirm he is not agreeable to that proposal. Secondly, the 4 or 5 parking places and the car parking changes, which are now included, might well meet the needs for this small slice of a much bigger picture. But we would urge councillors to seek reassurance that the works being proposed are not intended to cover all future applications. These will indisputably have significant implications which the small changes to local road infrastructure simply will not address. My third and final point, surprisingly, no steps are recommended to control traffic speeds. The roads remain at an unrestricted 60 miles per hour, which with poor lines of sight, especially with the PKC policy in place now to leave verges to grow out. We hope councillors will seek to address this specific speed issue, as it is a clear anomaly with other rural roads used by walkers and horses. Now to the pods. Marion. I'm sorry.
Can I just interject, Mr. Butler? Are you willing to take questions from members? And I'm wondering, for the sake of clarity, some of the members would like to maybe ask questions that you have raised. So could we maybe ask questions for yourself, and then Miss Elphinstone has her deputation. Are you?
I think it'd be best for the committee if we have the next deputation, and then we'll ask questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Okay, sorry for that interruption, Ms. Elphinstone. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Okay, button pressed. Thanks, councillors, for providing the opportunity to speak. As I've mentioned at a previous committee, I live on the edge of Murray's Hall estate and have done so for over 30 years. The hotel and golf course are an integral part of the area. Their survival should be supported, but not at any cost. This current application for the siting of 22 luxury glamping pods will be a tremendous boost for Murray's Hall, effectively giving 26 additional bedrooms because of the close proximity to the hotel. Within a relatively short time scale, the pods can be brought in and erected fairly quickly. But I'm unclear exactly what the proposal for the pods means in the longer term. The original master plan refers to the temporary provision of up to 19 luxury cabins immediately adjacent to the hotel in the same location as this application. It states that the cabins would be a meanwhile use until the extension to the hotel is in a position to be delivered. The cabins would then be redistributed to Area 11 on the master plan. So this is totally different to the application just now. The location is totally different. Area 11 is probably a 15-minute walk from the hotel and adjacent to residential properties. This current application is cited as being permanent on the application form, so there's a bit of confusion there. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? So clarification of these matters would be good. It seems that the original master plan is being chopped into smaller parts, which are being put forward for planning approval before the conditions of the planning permission in principle have been met by the applicant. Surely it's crucial at this stage of the development and for future stages that matters are addressed in the correct order, that the conditions of the master plan are met before any further planning applications are approved. I was trying to think of an analogy for that, maybe a bit like marrying your second wife before you divorced your first wife. Get things sorted and clear. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputations. Members, could you populate the chat box if you have any questions for Ms Elphinstone and Mr Butler? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you both for your deputations. Is it Mrs Elphinstone? Yeah, I didn't quite catch the name properly. I hope I got that right. Yeah. You mentioned there that you weren't sure if they were permanent or temporary. I think I picked that up right. Have you got a preference? Have you got a preference? Is there a problem either way? Can you share that with me? Whether they're temporary or permanent, tell me what the issue is.
Because if they're temporary, then it means that they're going to be recited as per the master plan, and the reciting of the pods is totally different to them just being next to the hotel. Siting them up the hill next to other houses is a major issue.
There appears to be no further questions, so you're free to go. Thank you for your deputations. Can I call on Mr Silcock and Mr Wall, agents, and act on behalf of applicants? Gentlemen, I'm sure you're aware of the procedures. When you're ready to talk, I'll start the clock. Yes, 5 minutes each.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Good morning. I'm James. Is that okay? Is that better? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm James Wall. I'm a senior planner at Turley and agent on the application. And with me is Gary Silcock, general manager of Murray's Hall Estates. But obviously, he'll be making his deputation afterwards. Just to say, we welcome the positive recommendation by the head of planning. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so the proposal before you today is for 22 glamping pods and represents the first step of delivering the Murray's Hall master plan. The principle of the glamping pods within this location and indeed within the green belt has been established through the grant of planning permission in principle, which was approved at this committee in December 2023. The detailed design of the pods and the application before you today has been carefully considered to ensure that they have a minimal impact on the area. The pods will be provided by Armadillo, who are an established provider of glamping pods and are based in Scotland. And they design, build and deliver luxury glamping pods. They've delivered quality pods in sensitive locations throughout Scotland, including Hebrides, Glen Nevis and Logie Farm, one of the most scenic routes in Fife. The location of the site to the southeast of the hotel comprises of the existing Lynedock golf course hole, a former putting green and former tennis court, meaning that proposals are located on land already altered by human interventions and minimise any impact the surrounding landscape whilst seeking to make use of existing resources. The pods are sustainable and have sensitive methods of construction with no piling or foundations required. Proposals have been sensitively designed within the existing topography and local landscape within the estate. No trees will be removed as part of the proposal. An additional tree and landscape planting is proposed to enhance biodiversity and local landscape setting. The traffic generation associated with the glamping pods is minimal and likely to be noticeable to other road users. However, 2 passing places have been proposed to be delivered with the detail of those passing places to be agreed with the council as part of a condition. 10 new parking spaces will be provided as well as and 12 additional spaces will be designated from the existing car park for users of the pods. The proposed development, so in conclusion, the proposed development will deliver sustainable additional accommodation to the existing estate, complementing the existing hotel bedrooms alongside sensitive landscape and biodiversity enhancements. So, yeah, in conclusion, the proposals meet the provisions of NPF4 and the local development plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Mr. Wilcock.
Thank you for allowing me to talk. The pods. This is our first phase of our master plan. It's there to show that we're trying to progress. Previous owners of Murray's Hall have had plans and not progressed from here. The current challenge that we have at Murray's Hall, it's seasonal. The 40 rooms that we have provide good profit through the summer months, but when it comes to the winter, the 40 rooms just does not give us enough profit to go through those quieter periods. The pods, they also give us a third style of room, a younger demographic. It links nicely to the Murray's Hall house and the lodges that we have there. So it expands the demographic that we can appeal to Murray's Hall. The whole phasing that we're trying to do is scalable. So the pods can move in really quick. They can be put in place within an hour. So a lot of the work is low scale. It's landscaping. So things that we do on a day-to-day basis around the estate. As I said, it's the rooms just give us another activity to a younger demographic as well. The profit that the lodges will provide for us, the pods, will mean that we can have more job creation because we're increasing the number of people that can stay in the hotel by 50%. Around the pods, to enhance that will be the biodiversity. It also allows us to look at the water coming off the hill. So Murray's Hall in the past was a farm before it became a golf course. As a farm, it's about getting water off the land. As a golf course, we need the water off the land even faster. The plans that we've got to around the pods will slow down any water coming towards the hotel and then into the burns from that as well. Around the pods, we want to enhance our biodiversity because that just makes it look nicer for our guests. The pods that we've actually chosen are not cheap and cheerful, underfloor heating, air conditioning, so very much aimed at the 5-star market to draw the right type of people to Perth. What Murray's Hall are trying to do is bring the right type of customers to Murray's Hall, but also to Perth for that 4-star luxury boutique market. And it's part of our larger investment that will bring £169 million of financial benefit to the area. Through the planning process, we've listened. We have changed what our initial thoughts were, and we've listened to people. We've also been going through this a long time, 3.5 years. So we are not trying to rush anything here. We're listening and we're changing and adapting, not just to business. The pods allow us, the lodges, when we go forward, allow us to increase or slow down as the business changes. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Are you willing to take questions from members? Okay. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. And question possibly directed to both of you, really. It's just a follow-up to my question to the deputies. How long do you envisage that these pods will actually be in this particular location?
The pods themselves are classed as caravans, so they can be plugged in, plugged out. If I knew that question, I'm sure I'd be a lot wealthier than I am now. I don't know. The 22 pods allow us to invest to a different demographic. If it's successful, wonderful, it'll allow us to progress the project on. The 50 rooms to the hotel would come from the success of the pods as well from there. So it's a question that I don't know, because I don't know what the years ahead will be.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks for asking me, and thank you for your deputation. 2 points really to do with the pods. I take it from the map there's no parking at the pods, people have to park somewhere else to come down. But the second point was, again, following on from Councillor Allen, presumably there'll have to be services linked into these pods, I mean electric, water, which won't make them as mobile as perhaps you think. Could I clarify that?
The site that we've chosen has been chosen because those services are already there. The car parking, there is town car park spaces beside the pods, and there's also the golf site and then the hotel site as well. The pods are going to become part of our room stock. So it's classed as the hotel. So everything, reception still at the hotel. So it is part of our room stock.
So just to follow on for that, but it sounds then that these probably will end up being there. Is that right? That's going to be their location. They won't be moved because obviously you've obviously got services plumbed into it all there already. It would sound like they're going to be a permanent fixture. Is that right?
To do the 50 bedrooms, will take up that land.
Bailey Williamson.
Sorry, I was just wanting some reassurance. Sean showed in his presentation the colour of the pods was white, and I was just wondering if the intention is to make them more timber coloured from the traditional ones I've seen anyway, to blend in better.
They are brown. It is, yeah. It's a special wood that ages by this company Armadillo.
Gentlemen, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations. I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. It's a question for Mr. Panton. This concept of master plans on a major development. My understanding, I may have got this wrong, is that the master plan is not approved initially, but it's built gradually over time. So there won't be a full master plan. It's built up gradually. That's given us an idea of what's going to be developed. Is that right? I wonder if you could just explain that in full. It's come up before, I know. But...
Thanks, Councillor Braun. So yeah, as I'd said in my introduction, this is not an approval of matters of the in principle application, which was the major application in principle, which, as the first deputation said, that had various conditions on there about master planning and phasing. This is a standalone planning permission, which the applicant is entitled to submit that way. So the conditions that were attached to in principle are not binding like they would be if they were an approval of matters. However, they are a material consideration for us. But for us here, we need to look at what the benefit for a master plan would be for this particular area of the site. And we know now, because we've got the detail, exactly what is proposed there. So the master plan will be more relevant to the stages to come now, because we know what's proposed here through this application. But those conditions will still remain on them principle, which is major, but that's not what's before us today. Does that clarify?
Thank you. Any further questions? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. It's really just a question about the developers' contributions here of £48,048. The transport infrastructure. Could you just clarify what that would be attributed to? Because the deputies had made reference to passing places and etc.
Yes, certainly. So that's just in line with our development contribution supplementary guidance. So that's about the improvements to the overall road network. So for example, the increase in traffic along coming out of Bridgend, for example, it's to give the council a pot of money, if you like, to do the upgrades there. So that contribution will not fund the passing places. The passing places will be for the developer to do themselves. So that's just going into the wider transport pot, if you like.
Councillor Braun again.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Another point to raise. It was on the deputation I mentioned about the transport assessment. There was some objections was mentioned originally, and then it turned to support. I just wonder what changed that decision. Mr. McLean can give us an indication of that, because it was raised that originally was a concern over it, and it was supported. And if I could, sorry, yeah.
Lachlan, I'll take that. I think your question is because the audit trail was indicated not to be there. Can Lachlan explain what information came in and why the position was changed to a positive one?
That was very eloquently put, Mr. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, Lachlan.
Yep, thanks for the question. So in terms of the kind of audit trail and information that came in, yes, there was further information that came in from the applicant with regards to the parking, which I had comments on as well. So they provided the clarity that there was going to be 10 additional spaces plus the 12 parking spaces that were within the original site, and that signage would be included there. There was also a little bit about servicing on site as well, and as the manager of the site clarified today, it'll be undertaken within the wider hotel servicing as well. So that'll be waste and also bedding and things like that. That'll all be undertaken within the existing facilities on site there. There was also the signing strategy that we looked at. So there was one of the drawings that I think hopefully has been made publicly available in terms of when the CTLR opens, that's across Tail Link Road, that we will have additional signage on site. There was also further discussion about whether some of the existing signage on the current road network should be removed to redirect customers to the site using other roads or using more appropriate roads. So that's one of the conditions that we're looking for to be discussed in more detail. So we have that as a recommended condition there. And then finally, it was the passing places in terms of what the applicant was proposing to deliver. So there, what they proposed to deliver was passing place number 3 and passing place number 7. I felt that 2 additional passing places places would be required between the west and the east entrances of Murray's Hall. So I've requested a further 2 passing places there, and we've given the specification within the condition. There was a final point, sorry, I've just remembered there. It was the pickup service. At this time, the applicant wasn't proposing to do the pickup service. It was mentioned in the transport statement, but we would envisage that coming forward with additional phases on site, particularly for maybe the spa facilities and the other lodges that were proposed. Thank you.
Welcome.
If there's no other questions, can I just ask one more to Mr. McLean, if that's all right? And there was mention, of course, of speeding as well in the area, and he may not know the answer to this, but my understanding is obviously the 20-mile limits are coming in various areas. You mentioned CTLR, which I understand there's going to be physical measures put into the areas. I just wonder if you knew of anything happening around this part of the world.
Sorry, I don't know of anything around this area at the moment, but that's something that we could maybe ask our traffic and network team to look at in more detail.
Thank you. Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. My question is around about the travel plan, and Lachlan just alluded to it just a moment ago, and it was really about what potentially might that look like. Is the Murray's Hall on a bus route, for example? Is that the type of sustainable transport you're looking for?
Thank you. In terms of Murray's Hall being on a bus route, there is no direct bus that goes up to the site there. There are a number of core paths within the area that will encourage walking and cycling down into Scone. So it's about the promotion of that on site as well. What can the applicant do to promote them to people who will be staying on site, and also any staff members that will be working on site there too?
Thank you. I see no further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to propose a motion to proceed with the application as per laid out in our papers and the conditions advised by the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bailey Williamson, you're seconding?
Yeah, happy to second as outlined by Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. Can I ask if there is an amendment? Amendment. Can I ask if members have a comment on the report? Councillor James.
Sorry, Convener, I will be brief, promise. It's nice to see something like this coming forward. It's a business, a well-established business, trying to do their best, and I think it was right of us to try and help them along their way. Very little impact elsewhere, but this is great, so thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted in line with the report of handling. Thank you. We'll now take a 1 hour lunch break. Back here at 1:20.